Hi everybody, this is Alchemist 2 and I'm back again with another book review. I just recently read Resilience from the Heart, The Power to Thrive in Life's Extremes. And this is yet another book by Gregg, Braden, one of my favorite authors of all time. And this is actually a revised version of The Turning Point. And this is a relatively new book, copyright 2015. I like this beginning statement here. We're drowning in information while starving for wisdom. The world henceforth will be run by synthesizers, people able to put together the right information at the right time, think critically about it, and make important choices wisely. Yeah, there's a lot of profundity in that, but this is just a fascinating book. It speaks of what the Lakota Sioux call the Shantaishta, or the little eye of the heart, also known as the second brain. And Lakota Sioux, they believe that the heart retains memory, and it has some really compelling examples of this. It's absolutely just phenomenal. And one of the most intriguing examples I found here, it was of a 10-year-old girl that received the heart of an 8-year-old girl who had been murdered, and the 10-year-old girl started having nightmares, and nobody could figure out why. She even received counseling for it, and she was able to provide in detail what preceded the murder of her donor, and then they were able to actually solve the murder based on her information. I thought, holy cow, and it was just so shocking and surreal and otherworldly, and I've never doubted it. And they talk about Heart Math Institute and the Taurian field and things that I'm very intrigued by and interested and fascinated by, and this book it'll grab a hold of you from the very beginning and never let you go. And it talks about population growth versus the use of fossil fuels, and how we should be thinking more along the line of a renewable fuel source. And I thought, yes, I concur. And they talk about thorium, which doesn't have the same volatile components as uranium does. Look at Chernobyl as an example. And it speaks about food, and there's a perma-ecology, I think it's called perma-ecology. And what they do is they basically grow gardens on top of roofs. I forget where this was, but he has an example of it. And they were able to sustain the entire neighborhood growing their own food. And it was really very, very, very interesting information. He has quite a bit of it here. It's just, it's a mixture of ecology, economy, anthropology, science, biology. I mean, everything you can think of, including string theory and physics, and it's all there. And even the wisdom of the elders, like the Lakota Sioux, he talks about that, because his expertise is based on the indigenous population of the Hopi and the Maya and the Inca, the Tibetans, and I forget if he studies other cultures. I'm sure he does. He talks quite a bit about Native Americans, and I really respect them as a people, and their wisdom is timeless. And I think we're going back to that kind of understanding and connection, and it's all about connections. And he talks about how we need to become more connected as a people, and why separation is not a good thing, and we're communal by nature. And of course, anthropology class taught me this a long time ago. We're social beings. We can't live amongst ourselves as islands, because we'll die. There's strength in numbers. Trying to think what else the book talks about. It talks about how we're in a turning point right now, or a tipping point, and we can either choose one way or the other. And then it talks about how the real change happens once the new paradigm is either embraced or ignored. And I thought, yeah, there's truth to that too. But I mean, there's so much. It's not just a book that you can just pick up and say, "Oh, I've learned everything I can possibly get from this book," and there's no more information that's new or different or challenging to me. And this will revolutionize your life. It will transform you. I know it has for me. And I thought, yeah, I already know most of this stuff, but yet some of it's coming across as if I'm just beginning to hear it for the very first time. And it shakes you and it changes you, and I'm glad that I had a chance to read it. It's only 200 and yeah, those are references at the end. He always cites his work, which I'm so happy he does. Those are all the references and endnotes, but not including the reference notes. It's 275, but I'm going to read the very last few pages about transformation. Yeah, this is, I love. It's just so compelling and thought-provoking. Welcome home. When we consider separately the facts of our time of extremes, the records of Earth's ancient history, and the experiences of our indigenous ancestors from thousands of years ago, we're presented with interesting information. I can speak English well. When we marry these facts, they tell us a story. It's our story, and we're completing a chapter that we began over 5,000 years ago, probably much earlier than that, if you go by archaeological records, carbon dating and all that. We're living the repeat today of the cycles of change. He talks about cycles, and I like this. It's all a cycle. It's all transformation that our ancestors experienced in their time. The big difference is that we're sharing the experience with a family of 7 billion people. I know I wanted to emphasize that. He doesn't have it emphasized, but I feel he should. Although we can't know precisely how our story will end, we know with certainty that our time of extremes is the birth of a new normal and a new way of life. Amen. Our lives are changing to reflect this transition. Your ability to thrive through the transition while turning our time of extremes into a time of transformation hinges upon 1, your willingness to acknowledge the emerging world, and 2, how you will learn to adapt to it. It makes sense to expect volatility where life has been smooth sailing in the past. Well, yeah, we already know. This is already beginning to happen. It is just the birth pangs, my friend. It makes sense to expect record-setting weather and to plan accordingly. It makes sense that the weakened economies of the world point to the need for new strategies in your ideas of savings and retirement. It makes sense to plan for temporary disruptions in supplies and services as the strain of climate change and the world's reduced workforce is reflected in your life. These are among the realities that you face as the world and your life makes way for the new normal. They're inconvenient, but they're temporary. We're not being honest with ourselves or one another if we pretend that they don't exist. To turn such extremes into transformation, you must be willing to acknowledge what the world shows you and accept your role in adapting to what you're being shown. I intend on being a part of the solution rather than the problem. That's the important thing. Because our time of extremes is so very different from times past, it makes perfect sense to expect that our lives must change and our thinking must change as well. It makes perfect sense to live resiliently and adapt to our emerging world rather than to trust the solutions of the past and unto the problems of today. We've already tried those. When it comes to the world's economy and climate change, it's clear that the old solutions aren't working. It's also clear that to adapt to the transition we're living through, we must cross the traditional boundaries that have kept us from knowing ourselves in the past. As we do, something wonderful begins to happen. And it all begins with a heart-based resilience that we can build into our everyday lives. Each of the items in the preceding template represents an important element in your life. Each bullet is like a rubber band of possibility. I love that. That analogy is just so beautiful. I'm going to read it again. Each bullet is like a rubber band of possibilities that can only stretch so far. In our time of extremes, each aspect of our lives is being stretched to its limit. The question is, will you choose the turning points that ease the tension in your rubber bands of possibilities? Will you embrace the greatest transformation of power, wealth, and resources of the world? The shift is all about you. It's your journey. The new world has arrived. Welcome home. Holy crap! But yeah, I thought, yeah, that's heavy, dude, but it's really quite beautiful and just poetic in and of itself, and I'm glad that I have a chance to share this with everybody. But that's all I have to say about resilience from the heart, and I'm going to keep it, and I'm going to reread it when I feel like the time is right to reread it, because I think it's always going to be helpful with whatever I'm going through. Until next time, live long, prosper. Ciao, Zuzi!